Public comment. All right, with that, we will move on to our meeting minutes for March 4th. Are there any corrections or additions?
I will make a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes.
All there?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Thanks, y'all. All right, we will head into our next agenda item, which is our subcommittee bylaws revisions. And Jonathan, you're taking the lead on that, correct?
I will do that.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So the subcommittee bylaws revisions are it's pretty much a discussion in advance of the full board's consideration of expanding the membership. A couple of items that we'll look at is the naming convention is to stick with the board's original language of referring to it as a subcommittee, reflecting any composition changes to add the 2 additional members and a few administrative updates. So we'll walk through the various policy change or the bylaws changes and highlight those and look to ask questions as we go along with So the first item would be changes to the name and office, again, reflecting the Affordable Housing Subcommittee as a subcommittee established in 2019, and consideration to have that changed today at the board meeting. It was originally 3 members, and we're looking to expand that. All of the changes are on the slides, all of the highlights, the bold items of the new additions to language. Again, the membership, in addition to the 3 members who are commissioners, there will also be 2 resident members focusing on those who have relevant experience in affordable housing, housing finance, or related areas. I will note the application is intended to be released tomorrow once the full board has approved that expansion. For the subcommittee's terms, we've adjusted the language just a little bit to account for the 2 membership types. So commissioner members will still continue to be appointed for 2-year terms beginning in January of the year of appointment. For the resident members, there were a number of additions. First, that the resident members will be appointed by the full board, and their terms would begin in July of the year of appointment. For the first year, that is anticipated to happen more in the May-June timeline, so just adjusting for that appointment schedule, and then having 1 member whose first term would be for 1 year and the second member for 2 years, so that their appointments would also stagger. Resident members will not serve more than 2 successive terms. Any vacancy will be filled by the Board of Commissioners for the unexpired term of the vacant position. The board may remove any committee member for at any time for incapacity, unfitness, misconduct, or neglect of duty at its sole discretion, and no appointee may serve on more than 2 county-appointed boards, committees, or authorities unless exempted by the nature and position he or she may hold in governmental service. So some of that language is consistent with other boards and committees.
Is all the term section generally consistent with other?
That's our attempt. I don't know that it's consistent across all of the existing committees.
Right.
I know that was maybe a question that came up.
Try to have same language of each of these.
Different era.
And then for the subcommittee's officers, previously the chair and vice chair were selected by majority vote. That will continue. We have added additional draft language that the chair would be a member from the commissioner membership, and the vice chair would be from any of the members on the board or on the subcommittee. We do have a lot of language in our bylaws and policies that still refer to committees, so we will be making those changes as we come across them and may end up referring to it as a committee as we get used to it. For special meetings, previously, special meetings could be called by 2 members of the committee, and given the additional membership, that language has been shifted to reflect that a majority of members could call the special meeting. Similarly, a majority of members could also add items to the agenda, which was previously defined by 2 members, which was still a majority of 3. Following the same logic, public comment. Previously, 2 members could request or allow public comment on items of new business, and that has been changed to a majority of the subcommittee. The same way, a full 3 members had previously been required for public comment on old business items, and reflecting the same changes for new and old business, we could change that to a majority of members. On conflict of interest, previously there was the duty of every committee member to report any conflict of interest to the chair or vice chair. And as sort of an administrative change, we've added the clerk. So in this case, staff provide that role for the subcommittees. So allowing us to take note of any of those conflicts of interest and help manage that. And then for quorum, previously 2 of 3 members represented the quorum. In this case, that has also been changed to be a majority of the subcommittee membership. And then finally, a new addition to the bylaws is the duty to vote. Again, this was added to be consistent with other committees, other county committees, requiring that all members, unless there is a particular conflict of interest or reason that they would not be able to participate in a vote, would be expected to do so. That should be all of the draft changes to the bylaws. If there aren't any questions or discussion, we'd be glad to walk through that.
So just to clarify, I know there's initially concerns around potentially having unelected subcommittee members making decisions around county funding, but it sounds like because there has to be at least a majority, at least 1 commissioner will always be present before public funds are voted on to be expended. So do we feel comfortable with that, acknowledging that it could be 1 commissioner and 2 members of the public making funding decisions?
So we will, that's a great question. My understanding, you can clarify this, is that this subcommittee of 5 will make the recommendation to the full board of commissioners to make the final approval. Yes.
That is correct.
So there'll always be that step there, the commission. Okay, that's great.
That's
Yeah,
actually
that's a
the
great
next-
clarifying point. Thank you.
That's actually part of the next.
Oh, sorry, I didn't jump ahead. Apologize.
All good.
You did that up very well for you, Jonathan.
So
Do we
there's
need
no
to-
action needed on this at this time. Once the full board has approved the expansion of the board, we will bring the bylaws back to you next month for adoption.
For adoption.
Any changes we can make.
Thanks. We appreciate your work on this.
Yeah, thank you.
Kurt, thank you. Jonathan, Maddie, thank you very much. All right. See, our next item is authority revisions to our AHSP guidelines. And Jonathan's still with us.
Yes. So this again will be an item for discussion and will follow from the full board's approval of expanding the committee. And again, the composition change to include 2 resident members and some consideration around those financial decisions. So within the Affordable Housing Service Program guidelines, there are specific authorities designated for this committee. And that is to review the Affordable Housing Service Program application, make recommendations regarding funding to the board. It also previously says, or currently says, that the committee may recommend Affordable Housing Service Program contract terms, loan interest rates, and loan deferral to be recommended to the Community Development Division with specific authority to finalize loan interest rates and defer loan terms. So with the addition of resident members, staff have drafted new language into the guidelines and basically consolidated that to say that the subcommittee would review applications and make recommendations regarding funding. And that would also include those contract terms, loan interest rates, and loan deferral going to the board for final approval. That is actually the only change in the Affordable Housing Service Program guidelines at this time that would be impacted by the extension.
Do you need us to make a motion to approve those changes?
Again, we will hold that until after the decision.
To the next, we'll just bring it all back together.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks. And Lacey Hoyle is joining us for an update on the January 14th. Thanks for joining us, Lacey.
Absolutely, I'm glad to be here. So I want to just share kind of an initial overview of the results from the point in time count this year today. That data was released by the lead agency just last week, so we're continuing to review it, some clarification, some additional information. I'll be presenting a more thorough review of this data at my next quarterly update to you. So you'll see more than what I have for you today. First, just an overview. This might be a review, but the point in time count is a federally required count of individuals who are experiencing homelessness in the community. It's typically performed on a single night during the last 10 days of January. The federal requirement is for this count to occur every 2 years, but historically, our continuum of care has conducted this count yearly. And this count is intended to be a snapshot of people who meet the federal definition of literal homelessness in the community. So that's folks who are in emergency shelters, those who are in transitional housing, as well as unsheltered individuals. The count covers the full continuum of care, which is Buncombe County and its municipalities. For 2025, there was a street count the evening of January 28th and an additional street count during the day on the 29th, as well as volunteers at various service locations conducting surveys and some outreach to known encampments by outreach professionals during the day on the 29th. The PIC count is managed by city staff who are the lead agency, and it's conducted by providers and volunteers. This year we had 135 volunteers for the PIC count. One thing that's different about this year's count is that because the federal definition of literal homelessness includes people who may be staying in a hotel that is paid for by an agency or organization, the lead agency staff worked with FEMA to get aggregate data on individuals who are in hotels through FEMA's Transitional Housing Assistance Program on the night of the count. Most of those TSA participants were not experiencing homelessness before their hotel stay, and many of those households have since exited or will exit the TSA program into other housing. Because FEMA provided aggregate data only, there's no demographics. Lead agency staff will be following HUD guidance to extrapolate demographic data for those TSA participants based on general population census data. And that will be included in the report of the PIC count data that's submitted to HUD. So lead agency staff separated the TSA information for clarity and to allow for better comparison between 2024 and 2025 data. And you'll see on the next slide that I have done the same for us here today. So here are the results from the point in time count for 2025. I've also the 2024 data here just for comparison. So in emergency shelter, somehow we had the same number of individuals, just coincidentally from 2024 to 2025, 270. Transitional housing, we went from 250 individuals in 2024 to 157 in 2025. That drop is largely due to the loss of the VRQ facility. They experienced flooding during the storm. ABCCM is operating the VRQ at another location, but that capacity is a little less than the previous facility. The unsheltered number went from 219 to 328, so that's a pretty big jump there. And I want to just highlight that 116 of those unsheltered individuals, or 35% of that total group, reported that they are experiencing unsheltered homelessness because of the storm. So looking at the comparison between last year's total and this year's total without including that TSA data, our total count of individuals experiencing homelessness in our community increased by 16 people. The report, again, that the lead agency will submit to HUD will include that TSA data. So that means that our community will be reporting a total of 2,303 individuals experiencing homelessness the night of the point in time count for 2025. And then I wanted to just kind of do a preliminary breakdown with some of the demographic data. And again, I'll be sharing more details about the demographic breakdown when I do the quarterly update to the board. So I wanted to just highlight the breakdown by race, which you can see here, and just highlight a couple things. First, there was not data available for 30 respondents on race and ethnicity. So that's why you see a different total than the full count at the bottom of the slide. And again, the demographic data will not include the TSA participants because the lead agency has to follow the guidance to extrapolate that. Second, I have included the percentage of the total count for each category here for 2025. I did not include the 2024 percentages, but there was not really any meaningful change in the percentages between 2024 and 2025 for any category. I do want to just highlight again that, as has been the case in recent years, the percentage of Black or African American individuals who are experiencing homelessness in our community, so that's 17.6%. That's disproportionately high when compared to 2020 census data for Buncombe County, which indicates that 5.7% of the county's population identifies as Black or African American. So that's a disparity that we continue to be concerned about and working to understand and figure out how best to address.
Do we see that similarity with other municipalities in the, I mean, I know Western North Carolina is different than Charlotte, different than Raleigh, but is that typically what we see, or do we know if we're well outside the norm?
I would need to do a little bit more research to tell you specifically what it might look like for other municipalities in North Carolina, but I will say that generally nationwide, there's typically a disparity. I don't know that it's at this level, but there is typically a disparity in the number of folks who are Black or African American who are experiencing homelessness versus the population.
Thank you.
And then I also wanted to share some of the demographic characteristics by gender and age. Again, there were some folks who did not respond in each category, and that's why there's different totals for both. And again, the percentages are included here. We did not really see any major changes in those percentages between 2024 and 2025. It looks like most of the folks who were counted in the point in time count were males. I think that age breakdown is pretty much exactly what I would expect to see based on my conversations with service providers. Any questions about this data?
So Lizzie, this may not be something you can answer, but a lot of times when our schools come speak to us, they talk about the increased number of homeless, unhoused students in their schools. Most of them, I'm assuming, is not going to show up in this count because
Yeah, so the
The
McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness is different from the federal definition of literal homelessness. So those families do not get counted in this particular count, but they do get counted in other ways. We are monitoring those numbers and looking at trends. And the COC is also monitoring that as well.
you've been with us for a while. Was there anything in here that surprised you this time around?
I don't know that there was anything that really surprised me. I, of course, am concerned about the jump in the unsheltered number. But I wouldn't say I'm necessarily surprised by it. We know that the storm affected the community in lots of different ways, and that is one of the ways that it was affected. And I have some other thoughts to share that I want to wait until I've kind of had a chance to fully review the data. I'll be happy to share more of those thoughts when I do that quarterly update for you all.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
We would love to have you back.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for Lacey?
I just have one more quick question. I appreciated the opportunity to take part in the pit count this year, and just thank you and all the staff that put it together, because it was obviously a ton of work and really well done. And I felt really prepared to go out and have these conversations, and was paired up with a wonderful another volunteer. I'm curious, so we had 135 folks this year. How does that compare to past years? And I'm also curious how the number of volunteers we have maybe impacts the total number of folks we're able to talk to.
Sure.
And how that maybe, yeah.
So the lead agency does a great job at recruiting volunteers. And so we've seen that number of volunteers kind of steadily go up each year. And the engagement from the Continue with Care membership was really high this year. So we're very grateful for that. And I think that having more volunteers does mean that we can potentially reach more people. It means that we can more effectively canvass both within city limits, but also importantly, outside of city limits. And in particular, I will just say that volunteers who are familiar with the communities outside of city limits, like Swannanoa, Barnardsville, those areas where folks may not be as eager to talk to someone just kind of approaching them out of nowhere. Volunteers that are part of those communities and understand kind of the dynamics, who are willing to participate in the pit count, they made a difference for us this year, and I'll be sharing more information about that in the quarterly update. And I think that's an area that I'd like to see us focus on for kind of coordination and recruitment for next year's count.
It's great. Yeah, I was in Swannanoa, and I appreciated the chance to be out there because I've been spending so much time there doing recovery. So I wish I could have spent more time out there. It was just like,
I know, I
trying
was
to
in
get-
Barnardsville and I felt the same way. I really wish that I could have been out there more. Talked to more people.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of that. Appreciate that. Appreciate that.
All right, I'll be sharing more with you.
Thank you, Lacey. We appreciate your work. Right.
So
Our next
looking at
steps.
next steps, this was all we had for today's agenda, but over the next couple of meetings, we will be looking at the quarterly reports, so a little bit deeper dive than the monthly written reports that we have been providing. Continuing to review the bylaws changes, and then looking forward to June, having a cross-departmental report from some of the other teams that are working on issues related to housing. And then we have typically followed the board's example of canceling the committee meeting in July, but that's something that we could probably talk through over the next months.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, it's moving a record. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks everyone for joining us.